Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I'm going to be starting my vlog, possibly for the whole month, possibly for just half the month, just depending on how much I actually get read in the first half of the month. Either way, it is my vlog for February, specifically for the hashtag We Love Jenny readathon / a little bit of Feb Regency. So at this point, all of you probably have heard, because I've mentioned it multiple times on my channel. It's been around this corner of BookTube. You probably know of the loss of Jennifer Brooks. If by some chance you don't, Jennifer Brooks was a great friend of mine here on BookTube, someone I've hosted events with and just really looked up to, and she passed away suddenly at the beginning of this month. Sorry, at the beginning of January, and so we're doing this readathon in honor of her, and I am joining in. So I wanted to show off what I'm starting with this month, what I'm currently working on. First of all, this first one I'm going to mention is actually not for the We Love Jenny readathon, because it's just one that I need to finish in the next couple of weeks, because I'm doing a podcast episode with my friend on it. It's a book she actually got me for Christmas, and we're doing a special discussion about the books we got for each other and some thoughts we've had on them. And that book is The Map of Time by Felix J. Palmer. Excuse me, Palma, not Palmer. But anyway, I have been listening I was originally physically reading. I've struggled to physically read recently, so I started listening to the audiobook so I could make sure I get through it before we need to record our discussion. I'm not very far into it. I'm only like, okay, I'm a little farther than where my bookmark is right now, but I'm really only like maybe 100 pages in out of like over 700, maybe just about 700. I can't remember where it lies. Oh yeah, I think it's just over 600 actually. So anyway, that being said, oh no, you guys, okay, this book is about this young man who is connected in some way to the Jack the Ripper case, and it kind of comes up with this fictional perpetrator within the story that is supposedly Jack the Ripper. And there's going to be some sort of time travel aspect, there's going to be some sort of connection with H.G. Wells and Bram Stoker. I don't really know what else is going on. It's set in Victorian London. And I should start by saying I love the writing in this. I think the way this author is using language is beautiful, but I hate just about everything else about it. I really actually want to DNF it, but by nature of it being a gift from my friend and something we need to discuss in the podcast episode, I feel like I at least need to finish it, but I just don't want to. And I don't know if it's because of the narrator of the audiobook, but I just think what has happened so far, I just am not emotionally attached to this main character, even sort of. In fact, I'm not even attached to really any of the characters in this. I think there's kind of this weird tone to the plot line. I'm not having a good time, unfortunately, but like I said, I need to finish it. So maybe by the end I'll have a less negative feeling about it. This beginning part is just dealing with topics and situations that I just don't feel comfortable with the way it's handling them. Obviously, it's dealing with Jack the Ripper, and I just over time have come to feel more and more uncomfortable with true crime being discussed casually in fictional works. I guess that's the best way to put, like, probably where my feelings about this so far stem from is that. And yeah, I'm just really not attached to the characters at all, which also is just not helping. In fact, not only am I not attached to them, but I think the main character is kind of insufferable at this point. And his friend, his cousin, that's like becoming more of the other main focus in the story is also insufferable to me. So I don't know how I'm gonna end up feeling about this. Hopefully I will have some more interesting things to say. If it gets to a certain point where I'm like over halfway through and I'm just trudging, I might DNF it and just look up summaries of it, because I just can't force myself through this. And then on my podcast episode with her, I can just kind of discuss more in detail those things. And I feel like, you know, every work of literature and story can have something in it that will be inspiring and teach a good lesson, which is what our podcast is focused around. So I'm sure I can come up with something even if I don't finish it, but I do want to get at least over halfway through this, at least over 300 pages. And like I said, if I'm still just not into it, like, I'm just going to DNF it. I'm just not gonna finish it. I'm not going to force myself through that. And perhaps it will add an interesting dynamic to our discussion, because she really, really liked the book I got for her. So unfortunately, that's where we're at. So there's that. I also just barely started actually still for the podcast. So neither of these are on my TBR for this month, but I intend to finish both of them as fast as possible. And anyway, this one is Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orczy. This one actually works better for We Love Jenny Readathon because she did have a lot of interest in the French Revolution, which is what this is centered on. I think she liked this book as well. This is actually another one I need to read for the podcast. This one will come first, so I'm definitely going to finish this one before I even contemplate finishing The Map of Time for sure, because yeah, I need to finish this in the next like 6 days. So I've broken it up amongst those 6 days, so I'll listen to a certain amount of chapters each day, and we're going to plow through this. But I literally just started. I'm just 2 chapters in, and I'm enjoying it. It's good. I did read a good chunk of this when I was younger, and it was just the wrong time, and I ended up DNFing it. So this is kind of a reread, kind of a first time read. It's a weird blend right now. I've kind of considered it read because, like I said, I read a good majority of it. I just didn't quite finish it. At the time, I just was like, whatever, I'm counting it as read. So I was one of those. It was probably the only time I've ever really done that with this kind of thing, where I've just kind of treated it as if I've read it. But anyway, I am for sure reading it now, so we can discuss it for our podcast episode. I doubt it's going to be like a new favorite classic. I mean, I guess it might. It could surprise me. I have seen the film and really loved it, and I've listened to a couple of the songs from the musical. I honestly should listen to more because my roommate really, really loves that musical. But anyway, yes, this is going well. So this is what I'm focusing on right now. I also am still listening to The Hero of Ages, but I have put that kind of on pause while I finish these for the sake of the podcast. And then I'll come back to Hero of Ages for my audiobook listening at least. And then I need to figure out what to read first from my TBR pile, because I have a good chunk of books that are inspired by Jennifer Brooks in this readathon, and I want to get through as many as I can, ideally. So I'm kind of like very mixed on what I should start with. So first of all, I feel inclined to start with The Marriage Portrait just because I do need to read this for another reading challenge for the BookTube spin. But I kind of feel like, knowing my experiences with Maggie O'Farrell, I think this might slow me down. So I feel like maybe I should start with something a little more engaging than I think this is going to be for me. Something a little bit more dramatic and interesting, and potentially something shorter so that I can get through more stuff throughout the month. So I'm kind of leaning towards these 3. So I could go, basically these are all very different types of stories. It just depends on what my mood will be after I finish these other 2. So first of all, I have a historical fiction, The Second Mrs. Astor, about the Titanic and this historical scandal that was occurring kind of within the midst of the Titanic. So there's that one that's not terribly long that I could pick up. It's like just over 300 pages. Or if I wanted something a little weirder and off the wall, I could do All's Well, which is just kind of a weird, obsessive, strange book. If you've heard of Mona Awad and her books, you know that a lot of people describe them as very strange. So I could go that route, and that one's probably actually even shorter. Okay, just kidding. No, this is longer than The Second Mrs. Astor, but I think the font might be a little bit bigger. Anyway, so that is a possibility. Or I could go with Jennifer Brooks' favorite book of all time, Interview with the Vampire. But I also, with this one, I mean, it's like the supernatural and adds that aspect, but I have heard that it's kind of a slower moving thing. It's not a very action-based plotline in this, so I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to be in the mood for, like I said, after I finish these 2. So these are the 3, though, that I'm kind of most thinking about right now. Perhaps in between finishing those 2 books and starting another one, I may just read some either letters of John and Abigail Adams or some poetry by Percy Shelley. I was about to say Percy Blakeney, which if you've read The Scarlet Pimpernel or know anything about it, that's why that was on my brain. But anyway, that's where I'm starting this month. Hopefully I can, like I said, get through those 2 books pretty quickly so that I can really focus. And I guess with the Map of Time, I can kind of be listening to this audiobook while reading something else physically. I just really need to get done with the Scarlet Pimpernel first, and then I can focus on one of these other works, but we'll just have to see. I don't know what's going to happen. So that is the plan either way, and I'm excited to take you along with me as I explore some books that are inspired by Jennifer Brooks and just kind of have a good month of just reflecting and thinking about her and discussing her with other booktubers, and it will just be great. So yeah, welcome to the vlog. Hey guys, so it is the 2nd actually, so just literally the next day, and I actually finished the Scarlet Pimpernel. I was not expecting to read this fast, but I just ended up being like, you know what, I want to just listen through this, and just really enjoyed myself. So here we are. I have finished the Scarlet Pimpernel, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars on Storygraph, 4 stars on Goodreads. I feel like I don't have a lot to say about this as far as like specific things that I just loved or anything. I just had a great time listening to the audiobook for it. It's a great adventure type story and has a very enigmatic and fun and interesting main character, the Scarlet Pimpernel, and then even Marguerite as the female lead is also super interesting to follow. She's very intelligent but also very womanly, and I really loved the exploration of her character. I thought she was very unique compared to a lot of other women in other classics that I've read, and so I did really appreciate that characterization in here. The writing was nothing to scream home about or anything, but it was engaging, it was easy to read, especially for a classic. This one was published, I think, in 1905. Yes. So a little more recent than some of the other classics that I've read, and that definitely helped, like I said, with the language being super easy to read. It's very understandable. I can't remember if I mentioned in the last clip, but I did see the film adaptation of this from the 80s with Ian McKellen as Chauvelin and, what's her name? Jane Seymour as Marguerite. And I really, really love that film. So going into this with that background was really interesting because in the movie, they really flesh out the full story, I would say. Like there's a lot in here that's more like flashbacks or just kind of descriptions of memories. So we don't really get to see it on paper, we just kind of get to hear about it. But the movie actually fleshes out all of it. There's also a lot of other differences within the plot line of the film compared to this, which I don't think either are bad. I think it's just a different kind of plot line a little bit. I don't know, it's very similar in plot line. There's just some added elements to the film, and the ending is very different in some ways. I think the ending of the film is actually more interesting in some ways than the book. As far as the Scarlet Pimpernel storyline, as far as Marguerite's storyline, I think this one was more interesting. So it just depends on which character you want to focus on, I think. The film does have a lot more focus on the Scarlet Pimpernel himself and all of his goings on. There's no real mystery behind who the Scarlet Pimpernel is within the film because it just is told you from the very beginning who it is, and you just kind of follow his experience a little bit with Marguerite's perspective coming in a little bit later. On the other hand, the book is specifically from primarily Marguerite's point of view. You have a few moments where you get into the Scarlet Pimpernel's point of view, but we're not seeing him plot. We're not really seeing any of his great adventures. We're just kind of being told about them from a distance and then just following Marguerite as she shares her experiences. So it's it's definitely a very different experience, but it's the same story. Like I didn't feel like when I was reading this that this was completely like, what the heck is going on? There was one element that's in the film that has to do with the Dauphin, who is like basically the crown prince of France, that is not in the book, which kind of surprised me. So I'm not really sure why they added that to the movie when I feel like there was already enough chaos and stuff going on. Maybe it was just to add a little bit more to the exploits of the Scarlet Pimpernel, because like I said, there's a lot more time spent with him and showing us things. But anyway, all that to say, I really loved the film and I really loved this, and I just felt like both combined really fleshed out the story in a new way, and I really appreciated it. So really very much loved this. I definitely can see myself rereading this in the future, and it was a great start to my February reading month. In all honesty, I have no idea what I'm going to read next. I have my stack, but yeah, I don't know what's calling my name. I'll probably just kind of have a ponder on it for a little bit, and I'll come back in and just let you know here what I decide to pick up, or maybe I'll just kind of show it in a little montage. That's probably what I'll end up doing, and then describe my feelings about it a little ways into it at least. As far as the map of time, I will continue with that as well, so I will let you know once I get to a point where I have more thoughts to share, or if I just finish it and want to share that with you, I will. But that is where I'm at. So like I said, we'll probably do a little montage-y bit now because I have a few things going on this weekend, one of which is a Jane Austen party, so I'm sure I'm going to take a little bit of footage from that and show off to you all the fun we end up having. And then, like I said, I will get back to you as soon as I have thoughts on whatever book I end up picking up. Currently Thursday the 8th of February, and I have a few things going on. So first of all, I do want to go over some of my thoughts on what I've been reading, but I also have my book of the month box that I wanted to open with you guys. So we'll start with that because I'm just really excited. So let me get this popped open. So this month I ended up getting 3 books, which makes me kind of sad. So last month I ended up just doing an audiobook because I wasn't really interested in what they had to offer, and I was kind of like, oh, I'll try, one of these. But I probably should have just skipped it because even the audiobook I wasn't that excited about. I just was kind of like, oh, I just, I want to pick something. I was excited. So I did not skip it. And like I said, I should have because I ended up with 3 this month, so I could have gotten an extra credit for this month, but that's all right. February just had amazing picks, so I'll just run through them, starting with The Mayor of Maxwell Street by Avery Cunningham. This is a book following a Black journalist in the 20s, I believe, in New York. Chicago, actually, and she somehow gets involved in something. I don't really know much more than that. I did read through the synopsis, but it didn't stick with me. All the details didn't quite stick with me. But suffice it to say, it sounded really interesting. It is Black History Month this month, so I wouldn't mind trying to get in something for that. I don't know if I necessarily will, just because of the We Love Jenny Readathon and just my slow reading pace recently. But if not, I will try to get to this as soon as possible so that I can do a little bit of celebrating for that. If not, I will be able to do her Storyathon in March, I think, and this would probably work for that. So this is the first one I picked. Next I have The Foxwife by Youngse Chu. I probably did not say that correctly and I apologize for that, but this one is set in 1908 in the Qing dynasty in China, and there's some fantasy elements to it. All I really know, all I care to know. Also, all of these books that I ended up picking have very similar color themes to them, which is kind of interesting. So anyway, I got this one. I think this was technically my official pick, and then these other 2 were my add-ons, if I remember correctly. And the last one is Heartless Hunter, again, with a very similar color code. This one's by Kristen Ciccarelli. Again, don't know if I said that right. But this one follows a witch and a witch hunter, and it sounds like it's kind of a romantasy type story, and it just sounds great. It's also the first book in a series, so if I like this, I'll have even more to read, but we'll see when I get to it because I have so many on my TBR, like all of us here on BookTube, let's be honest. I just have so much to read, but I at least have a witchy option now, which I didn't previously. So that's my little book of the month stack for this month. Like I said, I did want to run briefly through some of my thoughts on what I've read. I have been continuing with The Map of Time by Felix J. Palma. I haven't actually updated where my bookmark is. I'm definitely further than this looks, but so far, I still am not really loving it. And I also, I really like the writing and there's some aspects to it that I appreciate, but I don't really like any of the characters and I don't really care about the plot. So we'll see how the rest goes. I don't know. My roommate made it sound like there's multiple perspectives and you're kind of floating around in them. So far, I've only really been in one, kind of 2 perspectives, so I haven't experienced that shift in the story quite yet. So I hope I do pretty soon because I'm just getting so tired of this main main character that we're focusing on. And I'm hoping that by the end of this, I'll at least give it like a 3-star. I really doubt, with how much I'm disliking it thus far, that I'm going to give it higher than that. But hopefully I can at least get there. I don't know. We'll see. This man just really likes describing genitalia in unnecessary moments, and I'm not a fan of that. I just don't need that in my life. So anyway, yeah, that's been my experience so far. So unfortunately not loving it. It is a big push for me to continue listening to this, but because of the nature of what I'm reading this for, I feel like I do need to force myself through it. So hopefully I'll be able to get this done really soon so I can just be done with it. And you might have seen in my montage, I can't remember if I actually got an image of it or not, but I did end up starting Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice as my next book for the We Love Jenny readathon, and I'm only 26 pages in, but I am really enjoying it. So I'm hoping I'll enjoy it all the rest of the way through and it will be great. The writing's just great. I do think the main character Louis is already very interesting, and the way it's being told through this interview process is so well done so far. Like, it just feels very much like we're really just hearing the story directly from the vampire. There's not a sense of it being a book that just happens to have kind of like this background of supposedly someone's telling it, but it seems too specific to actually be someone just telling their story. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just feel like it's being really well done so far, and I hope I'll be able to read some of this today. I don't know, I really want to chill today, but I do have a couple things going on. First of all, I am planning on feeding the missionaries from my church in my area. That shouldn't take very long. I just really have to bake. I did the prep work last night and I really just have to bake it, but I do have to get that done and then take it over to them, drop it off. And then at 6 o'clock, I actually have a discussion planned with Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia and Christy from Dostoevsky in Space, the hosts of this readathon, during which we just plan to chat about Jenny and just our experiences with her and get to know each other a little bit better. So I'm excited for that. My social anxiety is coming out for it, so there's a lot of anticipatory like stress with it, but I'm more looking forward to it than anything. But that is going to take up some of my time today, a little later today. And like I said, I just really want to chill as much as possible the rest of the day. So I'll probably be watching some of The Crown, and then I'd like to read Interview with the Vampire. I think those are my two main focuses throughout the rest of the day, besides those two things that will happen late afternoon, early evening kind of time. So hopefully it will just end up being a good day. Hopefully the conversation ends up being good. I doubt it will be bad. Yeah, that anticipatory anxiety is very much in my heart right now. So we're pushing past it and it will be all right. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say for now. I'll probably next update you most likely when I finish either Map of Time or Interview with the Vampire, or both, just whenever that happens. And then at that point, update you on what I decide to go to next. Hey guys, so it is the 23rd of February, so we've made it a little bit, and I finally did finish Interview with the Vampire. I actually finished this the other day and just haven't had a chance to film a clip talking about it. But here I am now, and I really enjoyed this. This was a book that I went into really not knowing how I'd feel about, and honestly, I probably settled in the best place I could have. So I ended up giving it a 4 stars, both on Storygraph and Goodreads, just a solid 4 stars. This book is honestly a literary masterpiece. Like, the language used is beautiful. Anne Rice's writing style is amazing. The characters are very well-rounded and interesting, and I really loved reading about them. The plot is engaging. It's definitely a more slow-moving, character-focused type story, but it does have a plot that is still engaging, and I really like the look at historical New Orleans and Anne Rice's clear love for that location. She is from there, I believe, so that makes sense, but she really loves the history there, and that really shines through, which I love. However, it does have a few things that just don't speak to me personally or make me a little uncomfortable. So the first thing that I do want to bring up, because I think other people will have issues with it as well, and it's something that I actually knew about going into this already, so like I went in knowing this was going to happen and being prepared, but basically there is a 5-year-old girl who is made into a vampire, and if you have any background with vampires, you know that they're made to be very sensual, sexualized creatures, in part just due to the intimacy of what they do to their victims. And so there's just a level of sensuality that goes along with that. And so even with this 5-year-old child, I mean, it kind of becomes more within the language as she gets older. Her body just doesn't age. But there are a lot of descriptions of her that are very sensual in nature and just made me uncomfortable. There's no like inappropriate scenes with her or anything like that. It's just the way she's described that made me feel gross, and I really didn't like it. I think that's also kind of part of what you're supposed to feel. I think you're not supposed to necessarily feel like it's a positive thing, but also she's kind of starts off being described in some of those ways from when they very first meet her, when she is very young still. She is a 5-year-old girl. So yeah, I didn't really love that, but I was prepared for it. And like I said, there's not really scenes or anything, so it didn't go far enough to a point where it really like made me want to stop reading, but it was there. So be aware of that going in. And then also I just don't really care for vampires. I don't dislike them. I think this was the book that if I was ever going to really enjoy a vampire book, it was going to be this one. And I just didn't. I just like the vampire thing just does not draw me in. I'm a witch girl. I like witches. So I need to read Anne Rice's series about witches because I probably would enjoy that a little bit better. And I believe actually that Jennifer Brooks said that her witch series was the better written. It was written later, and she said it was probably one of her best, Anne Rice's best works. And so I do want to pick that up because like I said, I really, really enjoyed the writing style of this and thought the storytelling was masterful. I just think it just wasn't for me. And so that's why I got a solid 4 stars, because of that weird thing with the young vampire, and then also with my tastes not being in favor of vampires that much. So unfortunately, I didn't give this a 5 stars. It's not a new favorite for me, but I can completely see why it was a favorite for Jennifer Brooks. It's very philosophical in the mind of our main vampire that we're following, the one that's being interviewed. He gets kind of pretentious sometimes, which again is very Jennifer Brooks. She loves the pretentious writing style and way of talking, and that's definitely in here. And she loved vampires as well, so I just completely understand why she loved this. And I'm really glad I read it. I honestly wouldn't be against rereading it at some point, especially with someone else. I think it would be a really interesting book discussion piece. I don't know if I'll continue on with the series. The next book is about a different vampire that's in this, and this definitely leads into what is going to happen in the next one. Not like everything that's going to happen, but it moves into the interviewer moving to another vampire. And so part of me would be interested in seeing how that goes because it's a very different vampire that he's going to be interviewing. So part of me, like I said, would like to read that, but I also have so many books I want to read. And like I said, the vampire thing just wasn't winning me over. So I don't know if that will ever happen. If it does, it will probably be a long time from now, but I am glad I read this. And yeah, that was my 3rd book, I think, that I finished in this video. I wish I had read more. I'm still getting out of that slump, as you can see, but I'm getting a lot better. I think I've been able to figure some things out in my personal life that are leading me to be more excited about reading again, and hopefully I can keep that momentum going. But anyway, I decided to start The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I took off the dust jacket. As you can see, I've literally just read like the first chapter, which is very, very short, just a couple, like 3 pages. Yeah, so not very far at all, but I am really enjoying it already. Like I said in the past, like Maggie O'Farrell has beautiful writing style, and I see that she's a talented writer, but she just never quite hits it for me. Like by the end of her books, I always am like, feel like I'm missing something, like I'm not quite as gripped as I wanted to be, even though I can't pinpoint usually a specific issue that I had that would cause me to not like fall in love with the story. So we'll see how this one goes. This one was picked for the We Love Jenny readathon because she loved Italy, and this book takes place in Italy following Lucrezia de Medici and her very brief marriage to her husband before she mysteriously passed away. So I'm very excited to see how this ends up going. I have a theory based on what other people have said as to how this is going to end, but I also am I feel like I don't know enough about this historical figure to dismiss this book just because I think I might know what the plot twist is at the end. So anyway, I'm very excited to read this, and hopefully, I'm really hoping I can finish it by the end of February because I still have like 6 days in the month, and this book isn't that long, so I'm hoping I'll be able to get myself to just sit and read it. I'm also in the middle of a couple TV shows. I'm watching The Crown, which I only have 5 episodes left. But I also started Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live action that was just released yesterday as of when I'm filming this, and I'm already a couple episodes in. I stayed up really late last night because I couldn't sleep, so I was watching that. So I do have a few things I am watching, which gets in the way of my reading sometimes, but I also feel like I've just kind of needed that break anyway. So my plans today are probably to watch some of those things. I need to edit a video for my podcast, and then I'd like to get at least some reading in today, so we'll see how that goes. Hey guys, so it is March 2nd, and I have finally finished The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I ended up enjoying this. It wasn't a new favorite or anything, but I did enjoy a lot of Maggie O'Farrell's writing style. I feel like sometimes she can get too descriptive and symbolic about her descriptions of like nature and things like that. At least she did in this one. So there were parts where I didn't really love that. I also kind of didn't love the ending. I saw it coming, but I just didn't really love the way it came together because I felt like it just made the main character feel very selfish and self-centered and just completely oblivious to the needs of other people of lower classes. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I just felt like there was this sense of like a lack of emotion and care for people she should care about, I guess I should say. And I know that the ending is just kind of meant to leave it a little bit open as to who knows what happens in the future and stuff. We're just going to focus on this one night and not so much the fallout of that. So I could see why that emotion wasn't really explored, but I wish it had been. It did make me want to reread Hamnet actually, because thinking back on Hamnet, I realized that that was just a much better crafted book overall. I think it was just a lot more interesting the way Maggie O'Farrell approached that compared to this. Like, this just felt a little more run-of-the-mill as far as historical fiction of this type, and so I feel like I need to reread Hamnet because I think going into it with the proper expectations, I'll enjoy it a lot more and recognize it as a much better literary work than I originally felt like it was with my mismatched expectations, if that makes sense, when I first read it. So I really wouldn't mind rereading that just to see how I feel like it compares to this once my expectations are in the right place, like I said. But as for this, I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, 4.25 on Storygraph. I thought it was enjoyable. I really enjoy the symbolism that Maggie O'Farrell plays with in her stories. I also enjoy the narrative format that she does. She does non-linear things a lot of the time in her stories, and I do enjoy that, the way she does it. I thought the main character, Lucrezia, was really interesting. Like, she just was the type of character where she's very different on the inside than she portrays herself on the outside, but it also feels very realistic and well-rounded, and I really appreciated that. I also found Alfonso to be a very interesting villain ultimately in this story. Lucrezia's husband, Alfonso, he just came across as a very realistic portrayal of an abusive husband, and I did appreciate that. I mean, obviously everybody's different, experiences are different, methods of abuse can be different, but I feel like this is a good representation of someone who seems really likable, and you're not quite sure why Lucrezia feels so unsettled by him beyond the fact that, like, she's really young and he's quite a bit older than her, but then just like little things start to happen and then bigger things start to happen, and yet he kind of pulls her back in consistently. And so I thought that was a really interesting, so I will say some content warnings for abuse and things like that because that's very much central to this story, and it was really interesting the way it's explored through this story while very much focusing on Lucrezia as a person as well, not just on the abuse itself. So I did really enjoy this. Again, not gonna be a favorite of the year or anything, but it is one that I'm glad I read. I wouldn't mind revisiting it in the future, and Maggie O'Farrell is still hanging on to me. I will be willing to read more of her books as they come out, but we will see how long that feeling lasts because, like I said, it's just been very mixed feelings as far as her books go. So yes, that is it for this vlog, the We Love Jenny Readathon vlog. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below if you've read any of the books I've mentioned, if you participated in We Love Jenny and had some books that you really loved that came up. I would love to hear about that. I hope you are having a wonderful day, a wonderful reading week, and I will see you next time. Bye!